Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to Create Black. My name is Bulelo Inkosazana Kwamyeni, and I'm so happy that you decided to take the time and join me today. So, I want to talk about an ancestor and an ancestral diet. So, you may be wondering, what is an ancestral diet? So, an ancestral diet is the type of diet that is closest to what our ancestors ate in their lifetime. And we know that during those times they ate more fresh fruits, and they didn't have processed foods, so their diet was pretty much healthier than the diet that we consume now. And they prepared their meals, whereas now we most of our meals are takeaways and we don't even know what's in the takeaways. So due to the fast pace of our lives, we have sort of consume whatever is available to us and not really thinking long and hard about, is it good for you and is it gonna nourish you and your soul. You just eat out of convenience because you have to, really. And sometimes we even eat the cheapest meal available, and we know that the meals which are cheaper generally are not the healthiest, but it is what we can afford. So an ancestral diet is basically the diet that is closest to what your ancestors ate. And and that is seen by the type of food that you consume. So I would describe this as the healthiest form of diet, simply because your ancestors did not eat processed food. They knew exactly what they ate, and they planted their own food, or they gathered their own food. Even the meat or the chicken that they ate was fresh compared to the chicken that we eat now, because it basically takes a week for a chicken to grow, which is not normal. It's really not normal. And we know that in order for a chicken to grow, it takes a very long time. But now our lives are so fast paced, to a point that everything needs to be fast. And of course, that's why we consume foods that are not exactly the healthiest. And due to the fact that sometimes we don't have much, we then tend to consume whatever is available to us. So, an ancestral diet is a diet that's closest to what your ancestors ate. So, depending on where you are from globally, that is the kind of diet that you would eat. So, if your ancestors were predominantly fishermen, then the most healthiest diet for you could probably be one that has a lot of fish, because this is what they ate, and this is what made them live long lives. However, I'm not saying that you shouldn't embark on trying new things, but what I'm trying to say is that maybe if we return back to the kinds of food that we consume, then maybe, just maybe, we will live longer, and it would eliminate some of the health issues that we have currently. A lot of people have high blood pressure, they have diabetes, and sometimes it all boils down to the kind of foods that we eat. Sometimes it can be things that are preventable, but because we are so consumed in this new way of living, we tend to suffer a lot. So an ancestral diet is the one that is closest to your natural self. It is the one that your ancestors used to consume, because it was a diet that is the most healthiest for you. Okay, so there are so many diets. There are just so many diets, and I think we get caught up in the hype of a certain diet. I know that a vegan diet is very healthy, but it is not practical for everybody. It is not realistic for everybody, because if you are to take away eggs and dairy and take away certain things that form up a person's diet, and even take away the consumption of meat, then you might have certain deficiencies, because at the end of the day, um, consuming a vegan diet, depending on where you are from, it is not cheap. It is honestly not cheap. And as it is, um, we already are people who don't have much. So now, as much as we want to change the diet, but sometimes it cannot be as realistic as one might want it to be. And this is not to say that a vegan diet is not good, but what I'm trying to say is that maybe instead of being caught up in the hype of a certain kind of diet, rather try a diet that is more realistic towards you, and that is probably an ancestral diet, because it is something that could possibly be easier for you to follow. It could possibly be something that is easier for you to even access without breaking your budget. So there's so many diets, and each of it serves a particular need. But I just feel that sometimes as people, we get caught up in the hype. We get caught up in the fact that so and so is doing it, and this is how amazing they look, or how their life has drastically changed. Yes, a diet has an ability to change your life, but the question then becomes, would you be able to sustain it in the long run? And the reality is, you might not be able to. And being caught up in the hype also makes it hard for you to even break away from a certain kind of diet if it no longer serves you. And as humans, as you grow, you might have different needs as per your age, so then a diet that made sense before might not necessarily make sense after 10 years, and you will then be accused of not being authentic, whereas an ancestral diet, you eat according to what you eat according to your natural self, and as time goes by, you can change, you can do certain things, tweak your diet a bit, but it still remains authentic to you. For example, one of the beautiful things that our ancestors used to do during their time is that during puberty, your diet would change. Your diet would change because, especially if you're a woman, you have now entered a stage of menstruation. So obviously, they had to tweak your diet according to the needs of you entering that stage. So in other families, you would find them saying that you shouldn't consume a lot of milk, you shouldn't, eat as much eggs as you used to. And part of doing that was to help you, um, like it was to help you ukuthi igazi lakho lingagijimi, because certain foods increase your sexual drive. So as you enter into this next stage or phase of your life, you certain things are going to change body wise, and certain things obviously would make your body develop faster, you know, than it should. So they would curb certain foods, and then they would um, ask you to consume more of this kind of food. And all of those things helped in the long run because it made you settle into the next phase of your life with ease. You know, it prepared your body, and it also trained your body towards um, consuming certain foods at certain times, because you know that you're going to have your menstrual period. You consume certain kinds of foods which actually help you in, you know, um, maintaining the nutrients that you need during that time. And it will also help you with easing some of the problems that people might have, because um, that diet, it was sometimes accompanied with certain, you know, medicines in order to help you. If you're a person that suffered from cramps, they would include certain herbs that would help you um, reduce and eventually eliminate cramps, you know. And we also see an ancestral diet happening when a person is undergoing initiations. I know that with Sangoma initiations, or if Udli Gobongo, dairy is always taken out. Sometimes fish is also excluded from your diet. And the main reason for dairy being removed completely is because during your initiations, it's a time for you to abstain. So you abstain from anything sexual, you abstain from anything that makes you, you know, disconnect from your calling or disconnect from your journey. So excluding certain types of foods helped you to sort of curb that rush, or yenza ukuthi ungagijimelwa igazi, so that you will be able to complete your initiation with ease. So um, certain foods were always eliminated, and when you eventually graduate from your initiation, then you can introduce back those foods into your life. But sometimes you are so used to not eating that type of food, you may just carry on not consuming that food anymore. So there were certain things that our elders knew, they knew, and they kept this knowledge, you know, within themselves. And it is so amazing how you realize that the the foods that they ate made them live longer. For one, it was never processed, and secondly, most of them practice substance farming, so they knew exactly the kind of food they ate because it was from the earth. They knew that it was fresh. And if ever they consume meat, it was, they knew the type of meat they were eating, you know. They knew the energy that that meat carried. They knew that is, if it's a chicken, they've been, you know, raising this chicken for a while, and they knew how they know how it, you know, was cooked, and therefore that makes that food healthier than the food that you buy, you know. Because now another problem with the chicken that we consume nowadays, especially our brine pack, oh, it has a lot of brine, and of course it has an expiry date like everything else nowadays. But if you, the moment you put it in a pot, it reduces the size, because this brain that is included in it, which is basically like salt water, it is not healthy. So it increases even your salt intake, and you think to yourself, but how is it that it looks so big when I bought this chicken, but the moment you put it in a pot, it is so small? And I think that's why they even introduced organic foods. But if you were really to really think deep about organic foods, these are the foods that we've been consuming, since the beginning of time. The foods that we ate were organic, but with the rise of slavery, we consumed whatever was available, and it wasn't the healthiest. And now we realize that even the water that we drink, it's not the purest form of water. And every time you see people, buying bottled water, fresh spring water with a pH balance of 4.4, even higher, you are like, these people are wasting money. Yay, these people know more than you do. Because for one, the bottled water that they are buying, the spring water, it is closest to the natural source. So it's the purest form of water that you can find. You know, it is not loaded with fluoride, which is also said to close your third eye. It is the kind of water that your ancestors drank, you know. But now it is not as easy to access. So if you are in a position where you are able to drink natural spring water, do so. If you're in a position where you are able to afford to buy that spring water, rather buy it. Either rather than buying your cool drink or your juice, buy that water. You will thank yourself later, because it is so much healthier than the water that we drink, which is tap water. uh, Tap water is actually loaded with so many other chemicals. But however, if you cannot afford it, then you drink it. You drink the tap water, because it's the only thing that is that you can get in that time. But if you're in a position where you are able to buy that spring water, buy it. Consume that instead. Consume that instead, because it is healthier. So everything that you see now, where they are introducing, a healthier lifestyle, black man, black woman, you have been healthy for centuries, long before slavery began. If you can try and get back to that type of diet, then you might return back to your glory days. It's something to consider. Consider embarking on an ancestral diet. Consider consuming that. If you are somewhere from the continent, and most of your people ate a certain type of diet, go back to it. Try it out. I know a lot of people are thinking that they are being modernized now, and they sort of don't want certain kinds of things because they feel that it might be backwards, or they feel that it might not be the healthiest, it's not as fancy. That food that your grandmother eats is probably the best food. I know whole lot of old women, especially laba bahlala emakhaya, as much as they eat meat, but they would make sure that there is green leafy vegetables. They will plant their own food, and they will eat as per season. So At a certain time, you know that beans are in season, it's harvest time. So a lot of the meals would have um, beans included in it, and beans are very healthy. So you would find umuntu edla iy'nkobe, or edle ujeqe nobhontshisi, or edle istambu. You know, all these foods are healthy for you. It's not backward, it's actually the way forward. And uthola ukuthi kokunye inyama idliwa ngaleso sikhathi, akuvele nje kumane kudliwa inyama noma kanjani noma inini. And one of the things we forget, we think ukuthi kokunye ingoba umuntu exakekile engayidli inyama njalo, kanti cha, umuntu uyazi ukuthi yonke into inesikhathi sayo. Angeke uze uphile kahle uma udla inyama zonke iy'nsuku. So you need to change your meals. You need to change your meals as per season. And that is the beauty of an ancestral diet. Knowing the right time to consume certain foods, knowing the type of foods that you should be including in your diet, and knowing the type of water that you should be drinking, and just grasping all this wisdom, because this is how you find umuntu emdala, but they are very healthy, and they can see better than we see because our eyes are fucked up, you know. They consume a diet that is closest to their natural self. And I hope we can get to a point where each and every person will let go of the hype, and they will just consume the foods that are good for them. Well, since you've made it towards the end, thank you so much for joining me today. And don't forget to be a grounding flavor.